good, or is it too small?
It's okay, I think. Okay. Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. So you're now going to hear, well, it's supposed to be Steve Tiki, or I guess Ian Foster's got added, and we should add Dan's name and maybe Stu's name as well. So as you probably know, you may have heard already, yesterday we had a plague of sequesters. Today it's a plague of, what is it? No, a flood. Tomorrow will be a plague of locusts, I think. So this is, we're going to talk here, give our, as we say, our product roadmap update. Really just 2 slides and some demos. The first, we're going to talk through a set of features that are in the works, and we'd love to hear feedback from you on particular ways you might want them talked, or maybe priorities. And then we've got a slide with some things that we're thinking about doing, and there we'd love to hear from you about whether they are useful or not. So next slide. Okay, so just do so. So actually, I realize I don't know that much about Globus Connect multi-user native packaging, so I'm going to ask Stu to speak to this one issue.
All right, so I guess Steve covers all of this. It takes 3 or 4 of us to equal what
it's
Steve knows.
Yeah.
So Globus Connect multi-user. So currently we have a Globus Connect multi-user. Many of you have installed. It's a tarball, kind of like built on. So it'll run on many different Linux platforms, and but it's not very easily updatable. You'd have to reinstall. Your configuration is going to get blown away. It's served us well for now, but we're moving to a native packaging, just like the Globus Toolkit, and we've. And I talked to some last night actually, and I think it'd be good to get some review on what we're doing. But it's really going to become a set of commands is what we're looking at to install the 3 components, which is GridFTP, MyProxy, and the MyProxy OAuth. 3 separate components that we're going to work to make it so you can install each of those maybe on separate machines, because you might want to do it that way in your own setup. And it kind of comes with the bells and whistles of easily updating your endpoint and your things with Globus Online. So it's kind of the dual thing. Get those pieces installed, and then it'll be easy to update each one of those pieces individually as you need to, instead of just one big kind of blob. So that's native packaging.
Right, so that's if there's any feedback on that, well, we'll move on, I guess. So next, okay, sorry, there was something there? Yeah. Please.
Yeah, so that's a good point. When you install the new one, wherever you install it is where home is. So that's kind of strange. Is the new RPM package going to put it somewhere standard?
Yeah, right. It'll just put in standard locations, and
because that's the only thing I don't like about the new one. For a newbie to just unpack it, you tell a guy to go put this out there, and they untar it in their home directory. That's where it's going to go, right?
I didn't quite get it. You're saying that you want it to install in standard locations, or you don't?
Oh, the tarball that we just downloaded and tested with, wherever you untar that and install it is the home directory, or is where your location, Globus location is set. So I'm just saying, for people who are now using a tarball, should there be a standard location for that will match the new RPMs coming down the road?
Well, the tarball method is going to go away.
Okay, so
this is that way today, but it is going to go away for a native package.
So we're going to just blow away the impact of what we have now and go with RPM.
There'll be a transition, right, to then recreate those endpoints that you're using right now, Globus Connect through with a native packaging method. It'll be a completely replaced method.
Okay, so just wait.
Yeah, and right, that'll be coming.
Okay, so next up we're going to give you actually a demo of, so we, at the moment as you probably know, well, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I don't know mine.
You can borrow that.
Oh, okay.
Here, you can have mine.
I don't think you're supposed to do that. Let's
Yeah,
grab the
do
mic.
that. You have to grab the mic.
Work for questions.
Yep.
This whole time.
Yep.
Does this work? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So
Are you? Is he live?
I'm not live?
No.
Okay.
No.
Is that better? Can everybody hear me now? Yes, apparently they can. What? At my mouth. Okay. I don't do this very often.
Then sing.
What? And sing. Great. So one of the updates that we're currently working on, we're actually hoping to get this out in the next few weeks, is an update to our Manage Endpoints page. If anybody's familiar with the old page, we've updated it a little, made it a little easier to navigate. We now have some new filters for sharing, so you can now see things that people have shared with you. It looks like Roshan has shared something with me, and some guy named Dan Morgan has shared something with me. And then I also have, we can see things that I have personally shared with other people. I can, once again, see the things that I'm currently administrating, and I can still see all, and I have a filter. I can look at Exceed, for instance. So I've got that. So pretty typical functionality. Instead of dialogues, because we're slowly moving into responsive web design, so you guys can use this on your iPads and Android devices. We now have a tabbed approach so that you can see an overview, see some basic data, see your server, and then if this were this endpoint is not currently set up for sharing, you could actually go ahead and share, and I can actually show that on, I believe, Go. Okay.
So as you know, as you may have seen, at the moment, sharing is integrated sort of in a strange way into the transfer mechanism. So you go in and sort of select when you're on the transfer screen, you can say, okay, share this endpoint, but now it'll be integrated into the endpoint management, which is a more natural place for it to be. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now we have the ability to do that. You'll be able to see that, see all your shares.
Anyone here? You need to talk
Oh,
louder.
I need to talk louder. I need to use my outside voice.
Yes.
So basically, what we've just kind of updated it a lot and added sharing to the page. There's also some background stuff. It should run a lot faster than it used to. We're in the process of upgrading some of our software in the background. Is there any comments, questions?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting feature about sharing. Can that be rolled into somebody else's service? If somebody wants to, use sharing, like they would use Globus Online for transfers, could the sharing mechanism be also, rolled into somebody else's? Like Keybase is doing their own packaging and, branding and all that sort of stuff. And sharing is also a big piece of infrastructure which somebody is doing something like that they don't really want to reinvent. Are there some thoughts on those?
Well, I think there's a REST API underpinning this, which could be used, and there's what we haven't looked at yet is ways of branding. I don't think branding the sharing pages, but presumably as we've provided for branding of the transfer pages, we could do the same thing for sharing. And maybe someone here is going to correct me. Rachana may say something. Wait, let's get the mic.
Once there's a branded page, everything that you see is branded for you.
Okay.
So you could get the sharing functionality, and like Ian said, if you want to integrate more tightly, the REST API supports it.
Yeah. And
I wonder if you've considered any sort of export type of methodology for all the sharing data. For a project, hitching their wagon to a new technology like this, the question of how they might be able to maintain a complex set of permissions and shares, if they decided to switch technologies, is an important one.
Yeah, that's a good question. So this is something we have discussed internally. Over time you may build up, there's state that Globus Online is maintaining for people. So initially it was just the set of transfers that you had performed. Maybe also the endpoints that you had defined. We could imagine, but over time you will start developing group definitions, perhaps sharing permissions and so forth. So I think it is very important that we make it easy for people to extract that, export it, as you say, if they wanted to move to a different system. So far, we don't have that capability, but we've discussed it. It's sort of on our list of things that we'd like to do. Yeah.
Could use the REST API. Even today, you could use the REST API to get a list of the current ACLs and sort of save that periodically. So there's not like a fully bundled system for export, but it's possible to get that data.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And similarly, I guess you could get your transfer history via the REST API. So there's individual pieces. I think over time we'll start to we'll work to improve those. So far, it's not something that anyone has asked for, so it hasn't sort of crept up to the top of the list.
Hey, if I could make a recommendation, if you go to the support.globus online and put it in as one of our suggested improvements, that gets a lot of traction with the team here. So if we see four or five or 100 people saying, yeah, we want this, it'll probably become part of the design. And
So I've suggested it as a requirement, but of course, I mean, I'm not a real user, so no one listens to me.
And just one more thought on that. There's a complementary action.
Yeah.
Can you import
Yes.
if you already have your groups established by some other mechanism?
Yeah, so another thing we'd like to be able to do is to, there's a whole set of groups we might like to be able to interoperate with. For example, grouper groups, perhaps Google groups, and these are all things that we've talked about but are not currently on the implementation plan. But let us know if you think that you want them. What's next? Okay.
That's a good question.
Let's see. Okay.
Next one is View Transfers Web GUI.
Okay, so we're also improving the View Transfers Web GUI, and I think we're also going to get a demo here as well.
So this isn't going to be a live demo. This is actually a design document that we're working on.
Okay.
It's a little bit functional. So basically the same thing you're used to on View Transfers, but with a nicer skin. You're again seeing your labels. We've done away with putting task IDs as a top level. We've got your progress bars. They're called out a little more. You still have the ability to cancel your tasks. You can automatically, if you've got an endpoint that is going to expire soon, within 2 hours, we'll give you the ability to automatically, you can click this renew button and it should pop up a dialog and let you go ahead and get yourself renewed so you don't lose your transfer. So kind of giving you a nice warning there. And then if you open this up, this is the same sort of dialog that you're currently seeing when you click on the progress bar that Steve's shown 3 or 4 times, just cleaned up. And again, you can cancel. And then we're also going to integrate the event log into the page here.
Nice looking. Yeah, any comments on that? I also, there's a comment over here. Yep.
Sorry, it was actually for the previous.
Yeah.
You were asking for feature sets, and you may have said it and I missed it. But I was wondering about auth-C, OAuth. Sorry, OAuth. Are you using OAuth 1 or 2? And there's some. You mentioned also Google Groups. If we can use OAuth 2, then we can make it direct. Anyone can write their own plugin and just integrate with their own Google Groups.
So I believe we're using OAuth 2.
I'm seeing nodding from Matthias in the back.
Sorry, there's nodding. And I don't know if there's any further comments like Rachana might want to provide on that.
So goes back to Ian's. There are plans to integrate with things like Google Groups, but we haven't had any specific user community step up and say they would like to do it. So if they do, it'll bubble up in priority, and we might use these. So.
But if you're using OAuth 2 and I can get an API key, I can do it myself, right?
Okay. So there is REST API. We use OAuth 2, and if there's a way for you to import groups, so with the REST API, you could import groups from anywhere, literally, right? And similarly, export groups out of it. We just don't have an easy single button mechanism to do it at this point. But yes, using the REST API, you could pull groups in.
You appear to have got rid of the labels. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
You've got rid of the labels?
No. The labels are still there. What we've done is on the old page. Let me see if I can bring up the old page.
So you can see labels there like a queue task.
It's probably easier if I compare it to the old one. So if you notice that we had task IDs, which kind of the feedback we got on task IDs is that 90% of people have no idea what a task ID actually represented. So what we're going to do, we're actually doing 2 things with View Transfers when we do this upgrade. One is for start transfer, getting back to this. For start transfer, the label is going to be auto-populated if you don't specify it, so that it says where you are going to and from. I don't know if we're going to do anything on the CLI. with the same effect. But
Okay, that was the bit that I
effectively, so
didn't
so
get.
there is some sort of label always there and always present, but this should replace the task ID as kind of the first level.
Yeah. But if you
Identify.
specify it, you'll override.
Absolutely, yeah. We're
Okay,
keeping the
that's
labels.
fine.
We very much like the labels.
Labels are important to us.
Good. Okay, next up. Anything else people would like to see in the View Transfer API? Well, no, anyway, no. So next up, what's
Feel
next
free
up?
to stop by my desk
Yeah.
where I'm sitting during the break if you
Yeah.
want to see more.
What's next? Okay, so we're as you know at the moment, you can use Globus Connect on your laptop. This is not Globus Connect multi-user, but the regular Globus Connect on your laptop or desktop to transfer data to and from other Globus online endpoints, but you can't transfer to or from another Globus Connect system. So we're putting in place machinery that will allow you to do that, to do so-called peer-to-peer transfers. And this is nothing that I don't believe that you will see different, except it will work. But under the covers, we're putting in place some different protocols that can deal with the various firewall traversal issues that arise or can arise in that context. The interesting issue about Globus Connect, of course, is that it can run behind a firewall or a NAT device, and it does that by basically reversing the order of the grid FTP protocol, so it sits there and talks to Globus Online to get the commands that it should execute, rather than sitting waiting for commands to come in. And so we need to be able to have both ends of a Globus Connect to Globus Connect transfer do that. So what is the status of that work? I think we've got a prototype working, is that correct?
Yeah.
Rice?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's prototype working.
Yeah. So we've got a prototype working. We're still, presumably, testing it and getting some kinks out of it. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. So I think that's going to be exciting. Oh, here's a question. Yeah.
How does the authentication work in that case? Is it up to the user to pick who can access their sort of local global connect setup on their laptop or desktop?
Well, I mean, by default, the right. How does authentication work? I mean, authentication, presumably is handled in the usual way. Authorization is what you're asking about. Who can you enable access? So I think by default, only yourself can access your Globus Connect endpoint. At some point, we'll, and I don't know, someone may enlighten me on this, there may be plans to allow for sharing on a Globus Connect endpoint, which is not currently supported, and that will then introduce this issue of authorization. But at the moment, it's only you yourself who can move things to your system. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the primary likely use case, is that then you'd share something off your laptop with somebody else, and that's how you'd then be able to get access.
Okay, so next. Sharing. There it is. It's coming. Yes. Any other questions? Sharing from Globus Connect, and I'm not sure what is the status of that or when we'll have it. But yeah, so you want to allow people to be able to obviously control, share data from their endpoint, and it will be done using the mechanisms that you saw yesterday, where you can enable access to specified Globus Online user IDs or Globus Online groups which contain particular user IDs. Okay, so various people have been asking us for HDFS Hadoop file system support. So, and we have an implementation from people at University of Nebraska Lincoln. I think that's the one. Is that the one we're working with? I'm looking around to see if anyone wants to.
That's right.
And so
Brian Bockelman, we're working with.
I don't know if anyone here is interested in that and will be interested in testing it once we have it. There's someone. Brock is interested. We certainly have some people at Argonne who want to be able to move data in and out of HDFS file systems. Okay, so now we have another demo. So we mentioned yesterday, as part of the value add that we're working to provide for providers, we have been developing what we call flight control, which is a thing that allows an endpoint manager to monitor, at least for now. Ultimately, we'd also like them to be able to manage the flows that come in and out of their site. So this is the flight control that's set. We do have a sort of overall flight control that we use to sort of track what's going on with the whole system, but what we provide now for people, particular sites, is the ability to monitor what's going on in terms of traffic in and out of their own site. So here we're showing, with Barali Runesh's permission, the flight control system for the University of Chicago Research Computing Center. And I bet no one can really see it except the people at the front row, but you've got, that's better. So you've got, you can see active jobs. It's early in the morning in Chicago, so maybe everyone's working on their basements at the moment. But, active jobs, and then information about job history, user, when it was completed, number of tasks, status, bytes transferred, speed, duration, faults, source, destination, etc. Right, so as this only at the moment provides you with monitoring capabilities, and we'll, on the next slide we'll talk about some thoughts we have for management capabilities. Okay, so maybe someone more knowledgeable than I should talk about single port Globus Connect multi-user. Do you want to say a few words?
All right. I believe with this is basically we've got some work going on with Grid FTP to kind of be able to put more communication through the control channel instead of the data channel, so that way you can kind of have it just all go through a single port, because that's a problem for people to set up the firewall for all the extra ports. So that's future. That's kind of in progress, but probably a little farther out than some of these others.
Next, is there more? Yeah. Okay, so a number of people have been asking for this. At the moment, as you know, we've made a big deal about how you can take your own storage system and put your data there and move it around without having to use cloud resources as you might with Dropbox. But of course, some people do want to use cloud resources. They want to use, for example, S3 to store stuff. They may want to use Glacier for archival storage. Some people want to use non-public cloud systems, but with HTTP access. For example, our colleagues at San Diego Supercomputer Center with their San Diego cloud. So we're working to provide support for basically endpoints that you interact with just as you would any other endpoint, but they are backed by, S3, Glacier, or some other HTTP-based system. We've had a lot of requests for all of these. I'd say in particular perhaps for Glacier, because quite a few campuses seem to be looking at Glacier as a way of providing some archival or off-site, low-cost off-site replication capabilities. So this would be, once we've got that in place, it would be easy to put in place policies that periodically copy your data or keep your data synchronized with a version of your data that's sitting on Glacier. Anything that people want to add to this? I'm not sure again of the timeline for this, but I know that a lot of people seem eager for this to happen. But you can always go online and enter your interest in it if you want to raise its priority. Okay, next. That's it. So now those are the things that we're working on at the moment, and I would think over the next year they will become available. Ravi, are you wanting to say something? No, you're just okay. That's all right. So now here's a few things that we've sort of been talking about, or people have talked to us about, and we'd love to get some feedback on. So, I don't know if there's too much to say about this, but some people would like to take our little various web GUI elements and turn them into widgets that they can incorporate into their own web pages. I'd love to have a little Globus counter in my webpage. That would be fun. But I'm sure other people have some other more useful things that they'd like to do with Globus web GUI elements.
Yeah, I think I've heard the picker page thrown around twice at GlobusWorld.
And this will become probably more important as we start adding in some of the various data set management capabilities, right? So you want to embed perhaps various aspects of data set search and discovery and tagging into different portals and so forth. Okay, next. Okay, HTTP access to shared endpoints. So we talked earlier about providing Globus Online access to systems that are accessed by HTTP, but we'd also like to allow people to, you can do this, I guess, with Dropbox. You create a shared endpoint and then send someone a URL to it, which they can access using HTTP. So that seems a pretty important thing to be able to have. We don't have it at the moment, and we'd like to add it. I don't know, that's not on the list of things to do at the moment, but certainly it seems something that some people tell us that they would like. Okay. Bandwidth Manager. So this is potentially a big project. It's focused on addressing the needs that we're hearing from resource providers. They'd like to be able to well, depending on the resource provider, a range of different things. Manage the amount of bandwidth that's consumed by Globus Online in and out of a particular endpoint. Manage how much bandwidth is used by a particular user or a particular group of users. Maybe the high-energy physicists aren't allowed to use more than 50% of it if someone else is doing something, or perhaps they're guaranteed at least 50%. Maybe the user Maduri is always overwhelming the site with genomes, so we want to keep him under control, something like that. So we've got some ideas about how to do this. Partly it's a question of building some bandwidth limiting features into GridFTP. We've built those before, and they're not part of the regular release, but we believe we know how to do it. Raj Kethamuthy and others built them a couple of years ago, and then put in place some mechanisms that will allow a resource owner to specify policies that might govern how bandwidth is consumed by their endpoint. And these policies, as I said, could range from simply saying, some users get priority, or a certain fraction of bandwidth is allocated to one group or another. In principle, it sounds, at least to me, fairly straightforward to express and implement those policies. When things get a bit tricky is if you have many sites doing this, and then you end up with sort of maybe a global optimization problem, right? So high-energy physics is high priority here, but low priority there, and then on the other hand, maybe biology is high priority at one site and low priority at another site. How do you solve those various constraints to end up with a set of allocations that are both fair in some sense, policy compliant, and also bandwidth maximizing? So we've got some ideas about how to do that, but it's still we're still early days in terms of design and implementation. But we'd certainly like to hear from people who might have policies that they'd like to be able to express at the site level. Okay. Next. Group email lists. Right, so now we've got groups. There's lots of things you might like to do with groups, right? So you can certainly use, of course, you can use them to manage sharing. You could also use them to manage, to do other things. But one obvious thing you'd like to be able to do is to send email to members of a group. So there's lots of other things you might want to do as well. Set up a wiki that the groups have access to. There's I guess an infinite or a wide range of collaboration tools that one might like to link into groups. And we've got some ideas about how to do some of those things, but one thing that lots of people ask for is a group email list, so at least you can mail members of a group. So we'd love to hear from you what features you might like to have in terms of some additional group support. We had a very nice proposal into DOE last year to build a very rich range of, Globus Group enable a wide range of collaboration tools. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was very well reviewed, but not funded. But we're keeping pushing on those things. Okay, next up, HIPAA. Right. So this question has come up a couple of times. Are we HIPAA compliant at the moment? Well, no. We move data from A to B, as you know, and A to B can both be HIPAA compliant data centers, but we ourselves, the services that we operate, run on Amazon, and they're certainly very well designed, have been security reviewed, but are not themselves HIPAA compliant. So we believe that we can do a couple of things. One is, and we're talking to Amazon and others about how to do this, make our services run on inside an element of the Amazon cloud that has appropriate security levels so that our services, our data movement services, can be HIPAA compliant. And we're also looking at ways of running things like Globus Genomics on elements of Amazon that themselves can be HIPAA compliant. So what we want to be able to do is to support, obviously, personal health information and other sensitive data. So we're certainly interested in talking to people who have an interest in those sorts of issues. So Ravi, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Or? Yeah.
So we kind of know what needs to be done in order to get the compliance.
Yeah.
It's about following these best practices that Amazon and other providers provide, and we're gonna get some certifications as well, so that we have more confidence in the compliance.
Yeah. So, and my understanding is, we'll be able to get to the point where we can say we're following this policy, and this policy, but it's still up to individual institutions to decide whether or not they trust us with HIPAA protected data, because HIPAA is not. There's no national HIPAA certification agency that once you've signed off on, people will then necessarily trust you.
Right. That's
Yeah.
correct.
So we'll have to see how that works out. So I think that's the end of our list of, yep. So any other things that people would like to see on this list? We'd love to hear from you. Yes.
As long as you're doing group email lists, I think it would be interesting to see branded flavors of wikis.
Yeah.
You'll want FossWiki, you'll want Moin Moin, you'll want DocuWiki, you'll want Confluence, and just be able to let people choose what they want and pay what they need to get that service.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. I mean, and I think it's, given these increasingly standardized interfaces for these things, it shouldn't be that hard to do. It's just a question of the time required to do the work, and then the time required to operate those services once they're there. So I think, go. Yeah. Another question, comment? No. Yeah.
Following up on the CI logon integration, the next obvious extension is that since your campus single sign-on can be used through this mechanism to streamline and embed that a little more. And in fact, there's no particular reason that we can't even hide it completely from the users. If you're a member of our campus, your logon will work. You don't have to go and select and click and proceed. So there can be some relatively simple things done with the URL and the embedding that might streamline this.
Okay. Yeah. Good thinking. Yep.
So you mentioned operations.
Yeah.
As you know, we have an international collaboration. And as far as I can tell, the only advantage to that is that there's someone awake always around the world who can log into, one of the admins who can log into our email servers and kick them when our email lists have gone down.
Yeah.
How are you going to address 24/7 by 365, which is what my project requires? And how are you going to make it affordable?
How are we going to make it portable?
Affordable.
Affordable. Okay. Yeah, affordable. Well, I say it may be that someone other than I is better to qualified to speak to this, so I'll just say a couple of things, and maybe while Stu collects his thoughts, if it's Stu, we monitor very carefully the availability of our services, and so we can report regularly on the uptime that we achieve. We also, for two reasons, for that's sort of a historical reason, but also so we get there's an alert system set up so we try and maximize uptime first of all by use of mirroring across availability zones and Amazon, etc., and a lot of careful monitoring, and the monitoring is set up to alert people, but obviously we don't have someone standing actually at a operations desk at every hour of the day. Yeah. Who's going to?
Matthias in the back.
Matthias. Wait a minute, we need a mic here. This is important.
So it may be worth mentioning that the overwhelming majority of downtime we've had over the last year and a half or so has been Amazon issues, actually, and there's not much we really can do about that with our current setup. So,
what is the total amount of downtime over the last year? Can you remind me?
I don't have it in my head right now. Sorry, but
I think it's been an hour or two over the last. So this is an estimate here, and I should have this information. We've calculated it out to certainly better than 3 nines, but yeah, Rachana now will tell me the answer. So this is a collective mind here.
I don't have an answer for downtime, but specifically to Scott's point,
Yeah.
like we have monitoring, we're trying to maximize uptime and everything, but it still remains we are response within first business day and best resolution. So right now we are not geared up for the 24/7 that you're asking for, but nobody so far has asked us for that either, right? We don't. So
No.
I understand that LIGO has an international collaborator and you might need it, but nobody has asked for that either.
Yeah, I understand. My observation, though, is, for at least for my user community, is if you mess with their ability to move files around, that's one thing, and log into cluster. But if their email goes down,
Yep.
the whole collaboration grinds to a halt. So that one has to be, I get email on Christmas Day from my users asking me to fix things. And I may not answer them that day, but the other days of the year I have to.
This is one of the reasons why, perhaps the primary reason why we moved our services to Amazon. We initially ran them at Argonne, which is a certainly very professionally managed DOE site, with redundant power and redundant networks and everything. On the other hand, if once a year or so they tell us they're shutting down power to the machine room for 12 hours for an upgrade, and that's not acceptable to our users. So we moved to Amazon, where you can replicate across availability zones, etc. Now, Amazon itself has occasional problems, which certainly get in the news. Our experience has been mostly that they have not affected us particularly because of our replication strategy. Certainly it's higher reliability than we would get at any campus or university system that we're aware of. Yeah.
So Ian, just 2 points that might be included in those points up there in terms of potential features, and one of them is for applications which don't actually require the entire file. They just want to read, let's say, 5% of the file, especially for those that are being executed out of the cloud environment. They don't want to pay the charge to slog over the entire file if they're only going to read a small amount of it. So are there any plans to address that use case? And then the other one, which is maybe included in the HTTP access for shared endpoints, we're finding a lot of users like the idea of having a global namespace to identify their data sets. And so if one had, for example, a set of endpoints that someone wanted to manage in terms of a global namespace, is there any thinking along those lines to build in that kind of capability?
Well, the first question, I'm not aware of anyone who's previously asked for partial file access, and so we should discuss and see if it's a requirement. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't build it in, but it hasn't come up as an issue. I mean, the namespace issue, well, Carl is sort of looking like he wants to say something there, so maybe I'll let him speak to that.
So I think certainly part of what we envision with the data set service that I talked about yesterday would be going a long way towards that namespace for data sets that you're talking about. I think there's an issue in, as we currently envision it, we're not thinking that it's kind of global in the Google sense where you would type in arbitrary terms and discover arbitrary data sets, but certainly our thinking is that within the context of a community, there would be the ability to search and retrieval of data sets based on attributes as part of that service that we would build out.
Okay. When were we supposed to finish, by the way? Was it 10? Or okay, so I'm running late. I'm sorry. I thought okay. Ravi seems to want to say something too. No. He just wants to sing at last. Okay, another question, and then we can perhaps wrap up.
Just one more idea.
Yeah.
In terms of another kind of Globus Online component, having Globus Online caches close to the compute environment would be really interesting.
Yeah, and that's something it's another thing we've talked about. I mean, you could certainly imagine building on or building into the infrastructure. We have mechanisms that would cache files, keep replicas, select replicas. We haven't done anything of that sort. I think it could be a fun thing to work with, perhaps with, say, the physics community. Okay, so we should probably wrap up at this point. I don't know. We're now running late. I thought I was 10-minute break. How about that? And then we'll get back. Yep. Thank you.